Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Secrets of the Sire. We talk comics, movies, TV, and pop culture every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on the Sire Studios digital network. That's siredigital.com. We're also on blogtalkradio.com/Sire Studios, youtube.com/Secrets of the Sire. Please go and subscribe to our page, facebook.com/Secrets of the Sire. We're on twitch.tv as well, /Secrets of the Sire, SIRE. Tonight's episode, retro review, Tim Burton's Batman. 30 years later, does it hold up? And we have the voice of the Batman. You like how I said it. Kevin Conroy from Batman, the animated series, Mask of the Phantasm, and much more. But basically, the iconic voice of Batman, our interview with him. As always, I am your host, Michael Dolce, and I am brought to you alongside the Lord of the Radio himself, Mr. Hassan Godwin. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. It's really hot outside, by the way.
It's actually hot in my studio right now too, and this is really like I'm actually a little distressed by this. So.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, it's good because we're in August. We got a month to go.
Yep.
Pretty much until the weather starts to break. Now we're gonna get an Indian summer probably, where the heat's gonna go well into September, and it won't be until like mid-October that it starts to cool off.
Yeah.
But it's good to know that we're getting through it, that we're in the last month of it. I like summer. I understand all you summer people. Summer vacation. I do not denigrate it. I hope everyone's having a great time. Yeah. I hope they're at the beach. They're living it up. They're enjoying this weather. But I gotta tell you, I do not like the heat.
No,
I'm not a heat person. I'm not a summer person. So I'm happy. I'm glad the summer's going without incident. That we're all gonna get through it. That it's been a smooth ride so far. So let's just get it done. That's what
you've mentioned this before, that you're not a summer person. In fact, you
I might have.
You are likened to the victim of Jack Napier when he uses the buzzer, the handheld buzzer. That's you. That's what you feel like.
That is exactly how I feel.
Is probably the best segue I've ever done on this show.
I think that guy's name was Retaliante.
Good.
I remember that.
Can I just tell you, I'm actually the worst. I'm the worst geek. I really am. I'm actually Actually, I am a geek. I think I've transferred over in my almost 40 years on this planet from being a nerd, which we've defined in previous episodes. Which again, you can go onto iTunes, iHeartRadio, YouTube. You can check out all of our previous shows. A nerd is someone who is so into one specific subject. A geek is more of someone that is learned enough, but about a various number of topics and not as deep. You just showed why you're a nerd and I'm a geek, because I'm like that guy, and you're like, that's his name.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I can't. There's nothing I can say about that. I don't know which of us. I don't know which is better, to be the guy who knows that guy's name, or there's just that you're the guy who knows that he understood the reference.
Yeah.
So, and you still kind of maintain your cool. You're kind of nerd adjacent kind of situation you can go with.
I like that, nerd adjacent.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a better thing to be than to be all I've discovered in my years of being alive, it's never good to be all of something. It's good to be some of a lot of things instead of all of one thing.
That is a conversation we will have at another time, because I wholly disagree, actually.
No.
Depending on what it is we're talking about.
Well, yeah, okay. So, but you do realize there's contingencies, though. There is some loose contingencies. So yeah, it's kind of I don't know. Geek wise, do you want to be all geek, or do you want to just kind of be geek adjacent? Which one?
Nowadays I'm more into the adjacent category. No, I like nerd adjacent. Because I think
nerd adjacent.
No,
as opposed to being a whole nerd.
Geek is essentially nerd adjacent anyway, but maybe nerd is a little deeper than what a geek is, because I think a geek is kind of like, I love Iron Man, I love Spider-Man, and it's like, oh, remember that what happened, that issue, 248?
With the Mandarin? Remember the situation where the Mandarin got...
Right, they'd be like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like, he's cool and he swings, across buildings. Like, that's like a geek. That's a geek thing. Like, I know who Venom is. I know who Doc Ock is. I know who Joker is. I can't tell you, whether or not the origin story of the Joker is, this, that, or the other. Like that's, I think, what a geek is. So I think Nerd Adjacent is a little deeper than that in the sense that there are definitely some things that I am an expert on.
Before you push us on, in my defense, the reason I know that guy's name is I think it's Revaliente, either Valiente or Retaliente, is because the line that provides his name is a very famous line from that movie of, you're a vicious bastard, Retaliente, and I'm glad you're dead, right? Because remember, he's talking to the corpse after he sets him on fire.
I remember, where does he get those wonderful toys?
Where does he get but that's the thing with nerds, there's never one line.
It's true.
There's a number of lines. Where does he get those wonderful toys? It's great. I got a story about that too later, but
you could tell it now if you want. I mean, it's not as if the spoiler referendum has ended at this point.
Okay, I didn't know we're in the show. You wanted to kind of lace into it.
Batman is now 30 years old, so I think at this point, if you want to break out a story about,
there'll be some angry person in the comments that are going to be like, "Hey,
all right, everybody out there, this is a spoiler. This movie's 30 years old. If you haven't seen it yet,
where does he get those wonderful toys? Was a great line. There are people who remember, and I'm sure, I don't know which copy of Batman you saw. There are people who remember after he says that, because it's the great skylight scene. If you're a comic book fan in the 90s, from the 90s, you will know that after that scene, there were skylights broken throughout comicdom. For at least 20 years after that, characters who come through the skylight or whatever. Yeah. That was, to my knowledge, that's one of the first kind of first iterations of a superhero coming through the skylight. So Batman drops down through the skylight, he uses the tow cable or whatever the wench or whatever he used, the bat wench or however that worked. Cool scene, impractical device, but a very cool scene. But that's me being a nerd.
This entire movie is the foundation.
Yes.
Cool scenes for
comics. And I'm not going to be able to argue with we're going to have a terrible show because I'm not going to be able to argue with a lot of any of the reverence that you're going to show the movie. But so when he swings down, he swings away, and Joker's, where does he get those wonderful toys, right? Mm-hmm. A number of people on opening night clearly remember a scene right after that where he looks at his men. And he says, well, don't just stand there. Go ask him. And then that's when the cars come blasting out. Right. Sure. In every cut I've ever seen of that cut is no longer there. It's just, where does he get those wonderful toys? And then it cuts to Bruce Wayne. I mean, excuse me, spoiler. Batman cuts to Batman and Vicky Vale jumping into what is, quite honestly, my favorite Batmobile.
It's the best Batmobile. It's the best of a lot of things.
That's an argument, though. That's a big geek argument. Because a lot of people like the Tumbler. A lot of people like I dislike the Tumbler tremendously as a Batmobile.
Let's break this down a second, and then we'll get into the question of whether or not the movie really truly holds up 30 years later. But
true. Okay, we'll get into that.
What Tim Burton was able to do, and why it actually will answer the question for me as to whether it holds up or not, is he's able to create this fantastical Gotham City, okay? And you could replace the word Gotham City with world. I mean, is this the 40s? Is it the 80s? Is it its own universe? I mean, he melds certain fashion aesthetics. All the men are in hats and trench coats, which was a big, that's a 1940s.
Yeah, definitely 1930s,
1930s, something like that. 30s to 50s, right?
Yeah.
But meanwhile, I mean, everything, everyone's hairstyle is the 80s, and it could be the 1980s just as easily as it could be the 30s or 40s.
Yes, it could.
It's an Elseworlds style Gotham that, to me, is the main reason why you can get away with, if some of the CGI doesn't hold up, to me it's okay, because it's almost like I was recently watching Shape of Water, which I still haven't gotten through. It's still like an hour and a half or an hour into that movie, and I just can't get through it. I'm not a big fan of Guillermo del Toro, to be honest with you, when all is said and done. Well, that's an argument for another day.
You're not a nerd.
But he
you're not a
creates this
nerd.
world that's this like old style Hollywood magic world. And Tim Burton does the exact same thing, only, goes noir and darker and does this in this Batman creation. So to me, everything holds up because this world doesn't exist in 1989. So it can, or it does, I guess you could say. He created it in 1989, but it doesn't exist in 1989, and it has no timestamp. It has no date on it. It's not like he's swinging through, and obviously Spider-Man movies came out after 9/11, but it's not like you're going to see the World Trade Center and be like, oh wow, what a stark difference that is, having that there or having this there. No, he creates this, and it's also distinctly Tim Burton, which I actually do love Tim Burton's world. I mean, Danny Elfman's score, just enforces everything that we've seen, and the story.
I don't know. Forgive me if correct me if I'm wrong. You don't have to forgive me. I don't care about your forgiveness. But you can correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe, because I wasn't a super reader of Batman at the time in 1990 when that movie came out. My uncle was a tremendous Batman. I mean, tremendous. But I think Tim Burton's the first person. If he wasn't the first person to do it, if it wasn't invented in the comic books, he's definitely the first person in a total visual medium. Yeah, turn Gotham in and of itself into a character of Batman in the Batman story. Because as you're saying, and again, unfortunately, I completely agree with you.
No. I mean, I'll disagree with you here. Actually, I mean, if you read the comics, Dark Knight Returns came in '86, so I mean, Gotham was.
But was Gotham a character or just a kind of a dark place? I mean, Tim Burton gave Gotham kind of a like a menacing character to it. Yeah.
It was New York City in the '70s, right? It was New York City in the '70s, but it took place in the '30s.
Yes, New York in the '70s and the '30s.
At the same time, like, it was amazing. He did, create this element to it. Let me ask you a question.
Kind of really does work in the Batman spectrum. It really does complement the character in ways that Metropolis does not really complement Superman. Yes. So
when you rewatched the film, was there anything about it where you're like, wow, I forgot this, or oh wow, like where it brought up things, or was there anything that you kind of caught that you might not have caught the first time around, being that it was like 30 years ago?
Okay, so let me reveal two things. First of all, I didn't rewatch it, and the reason I didn't rewatch it is because I don't actually have a copy of it.
I actually do have it on DVD. I have all 4 Batman movies in one DVD. It's crazy.
I failed to get that copy of Batman on DVD. Now, the reason I'm perfectly willing to sit here and have this conversation with you about, in a retrospective, about this movie. The reason I know that the guy's name is Mr. Italiante is because I've seen Batman probably 1 zillion times. I think I do believe Star Wars beats out Batman in how many times I've replayed a movie.
Sure.
I think Batman's on par with one of my favorite, if not my total favorite, comic book movies of all time. Crow. I think Batman is on par with that of how many times I've rewatched it. So, and I had it on VHS. So I destroyed my VHS copy of it. Batman, I don't know if you remember it because you're a little younger than I am. You're not that much younger, but you're a little younger than I am. The phenomenon in 1990 behind Batman coming out was almost to the point of mass hysteria. Yeah. It was incredible. And up until then, Batman had kind of the conventional wisdom, not comic book wisdom, but conventional wisdom had Batman as kind of a joke because it was the Adam West Batman. Everybody knew the Adam West Batman. And I don't have a problem with the Adam West Batman. I think Adam West...
I actually don't either. That's one of my favorite Batmans, but I understand that it's not...
Exactly. It's got a place. It's got its place. It's just there are other iterations of Batman that that work better, right? For today's... So Tim Burton's Batman's all dressed in black. He's going to have body armor on. It's going to be totally dark. There's no Robin. It's just him and you're like, wait a minute, Batman's this thing. Batman's this big thing. And then that's when my uncle starts rolling out, like Batman Year One, and they're like, holy crap, Batman is a serious thing. That's when I became the first movie. So I'm I'm a little geek adjacent or nerd adjacent when it comes to Batman. Also, because the conventional wisdom is if you don't start with the source material, you're not a true nerd for the thing. I didn't start with the source material. I did start with Adam West's Batman, and then Tim Burton's Batman, and then I started getting into the comic books super heavy. But I've seen that movie too many times. I gotta say, I gotta be honest with you. So yeah, my favorite Joker. Even though I dislike the movie, my favorite Joker is Heath Ledger.
Sure.
However, Jack Nicholson's Joker is a class unto itself.
Yeah.
It is totally Jack Nicholson. It's not really a character. It's more Jack Nicholson and Joker.
Yeah. It's the performance. It's the performance that he gives, not necessarily the character itself that makes you stop and really be impressed.
Right. But Nicholson did elevate the Joker to mythical status. His performance, I think his portrayal of it, maybe it's not totally his portrayal.
Yeah.
The fact that someone of his caliber was playing, because how many superstars, and Jack Nicholson at the time was a superstar, a megastar. How many superstars were playing a comic book villain?
Right.
There was Gene Hackman, who was Lex Luthor, who played Lex Luthor actually against type. According to Lex Luthor in the comic books, and he was snarky, and I love Gene Hackman. I love his Lex Luthor, but I mean, look, the scenery chewing that Nicholson does, and the origin of the Joker, just who the Joker was, what the Joker was, the fact that wasn't just makeup to letting conventional audiences know now that's his face, that's not, that's why he's insane because he looks like that. That all that stuff was tremendous, and the Joker has never come down off of the pedestal that Jack Nicholson put him up on, in my opinion.
Right. Ledger's Joker, to your point, marries performance and character. Nicholson's performance because that's not Ledger. Elevates the character completely. I mean, the one thing I thought was very, I don't want to say use the word dated or silly, but it was very cartoonish. Cartoon villainish stuff is when he's like, his whole plot of, poisoning the makeup, and I'm like, well, that's a cartoon supervillain. That's what a cartoon supervillain does, and we have the hindsight of 30 years now of actual comic book movies that try to be as realistic as possible. Even though the Joker is an insane person, no matter who portrays him. That to me is like, okay, yeah, that is a little silly. That is a little silly. But again, it works because of the world that Burton sets up. It's almost like Burton sets up this universe that Jack Nicholson can just go and do all these things. And you're like, that seems legit.
It's not absurd. It's not completely
absurd. It's crazy.
And no one really, and it's arguable that even Burton himself really couldn't duplicate that kind of crazy world building that he did because Batman Returns, we'll have a discussion about that someday, but that's not another movie that I thoroughly enjoy, but it's not on par with the first Batman.
I'd have to watch that again. There was some creepy elements to that I just didn't like.
Yeah, because I think
it was just off-putting. Batman Returns is just off-putting, whereas Batman
because it was kind of a. It was. I'm going to use a terrible metaphor. It was a glaze in Batman. The Gotham, the gothicness of Gotham, and the kind of the absurd hyper reality of Gotham. Cops wearing leather. The giant statues in the middle of an avenue. Just everywhere. It was just kind of a glaze on top. It was just kind of a hint of cinematic or visual absurdity. Comic book absurdity, and I think even Burton and everybody else got kind of caught up with it and overdid it in Batman Returns.
Yeah,
certainly Schumacher didn't really know how to capture it, so he went for complete outlandishness.
Speaking of Schumacher, and this is again one of those things where it's like you rewatch Batman 30 years later, having an arsenal of successfully grounded superhero movies in your mental database to back you up. How amazing would it have been had Tim Burton been able to cast Billy D. Williams as Two-Face? That was to me the big standout when I was rewatching this, because I was like, wow, they have all the elements. They have the Commissioner Gordon. He's not the same Commissioner Gordon. He's a little out of shape here, but it works. You have Joker and Batman, and Vicky Vale kind of comes in. But I completely
the very conspicuously Mayor Koch looking mayor.
Yes.
Like Ed Koch looking there.
I completely forgot Billy D. Williams was Harvey Dent. When I think back to Batman, I don't remember that. And I said, wow, and if this movie had taken place now, the casting of Billy D. Williams would have automatically meant, because everything is a trilogy, that we would have seen that as Two-Face, and I actually would have enjoyed that I would have enjoyed him as Two-Face. I would have enjoyed to see where they go with it. Ironically, too, if you rewatch this movie 10 years ago versus the political times of today, Billy D. Williams, obviously, Harvey Dent is he is like a white guy in the comics, but he was cast as a black guy. But there's, in 1989, no one even, I don't know if comic book fans even cared that was there, because you didn't have the possibility of a trilogy. You didn't have the possibility that they would do more. Whereas if you cast him now, it would be like, wow, I can't believe you're race swapping Harvey Dent. So I guess we're going to get a black Two-Face now. It would be a conversation. It would be a conversation now. Whereas in 1989, it was just done. And there was no, and what a better time, right? What a simpler time when you could do that.
For entertainment, yeah, definitely. I think he was also, it's arguable, I think he was also portrayed as black in the animated series. Even though Richard Mall is the one who did the voice.
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't.
If you look at the character again, look at him again. It's arguable he was black in the cartoon.
All right. I mean, I'll believe you.
Yeah, look at the character again. He was definitely voiced by Richard Mall, who is a very white guy. Yeah. He's with a deep voice.
Well, I'll tell you what. That's a great segue, and we're going to go into commercial break. But later on today, we've got Kevin Conroy talking Batman, the animated series. He's going to be talking about all this other stuff. But when we come back, do Tim Burton's Batman movies still hold up? Does Batman 1989 still hold up? When we come back from a short break. Check out the all-new Sire Studios website, SireStudiosInc.com. Find all your back issues for The Sire, Mainstream, Undone, and more. And be on the lookout for news and announcements, convention appearances, and brand new podcasts coming to Sire Studios. That address again is SireStudiosInc.com. Welcome back to Secrets of the Sire. Secrets of the Sire is brought to you by all of our beloved patrons. Craig Caruso, Tom Osa, Einar Peterson, Matt Byer, Ashley Haikai, Omar Morales, Brian Phillips, Steve Ovecki, Program Director Stephanie Dolce, and as always, our Uber fan, Christina Dolce. Go to patreon.com/secrets of the Sire, S-I-R-E, or you can type in my name, spell it D-O-L-C-E, and you can find us there as well, too. Please go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/secrets of the Sire, which will be changing soon. We're going to be changing that URL pretty soon because we're expanding Sire Studios. We've got some cool announcements. We've got some cool things coming up in the coming weeks, new shows. So pretty excited about that. And as always, go on Spreaker or Stitcher or iTunes or, Pod this or Pod that. We are on every single podcasting apparatus you can possibly think of. And go check us out. And again, please subscribe. Please follow us. It really helps us. So really love it. All right. We were talking Tim Burton's Batman masterpiece in 1989. The question I threw out there to the interwebs was whether or not it held up or not. I got this article from GQ.com. 30 years ago, a superhero movie was not a guaranteed blockbuster. The last time Batman had been exposed to mass audiences, he had quipped around with Robin and Dance the Bat 2C. But the beginning of a new era of superhero movie, dark, violent, and self-serious, began in 1989 when Tim Burton's Batman hit theaters. Now that superheroes routinely dominate the box office, this article thought it would be interesting to revisit these prototypical blockbusters to see how they hold up today. The article kind of goes into the casting of Michael Keaton, which is something we didn't touch on yet. That, at the time, was controversial enough, according to this article, to inspire 50,000 angry letters to Warner Brothers from fans. It's hard to imagine Keaton being anyone's choice, except for Tim Burton. You know, so it's funny. I mean, I guess they didn't have time to complain about Harvey Dent because they're busy.
They didn't know who Harvey Dent was, you know? They really...
Yeah.
It really, I mean, they know who Two-Face is, but a lot of those fans at the time probably didn't, you know, because those are the vocal ones, the ones out in the, so they didn't know that Harvey Dent. It's like, oh man, see, you talk about being a bad geek. It's like the Lizard when they cast the Lizard in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah,
it was just Peter Parker's professor.
Yep.
Everyone's like, oh, they're laying the groundwork for the Lizard, and everyone's like, oh, what? Like, oh, with a guy with one arm? Why, who can, you know, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And, you know, so it was, I would say this about, before, I know we're going to get into Michael Keaton, I will say this about, I was thinking about this in the last segment, probably about Batman, and Batman alone, not the other three movies of that particular iteration. But Batman's kind of another example of true art. You know, like nobody believes in this thing, so since nobody believes in it, we can do whatever we want.
Sure.
You know, we can make it a complete art thing. And it seems like what Tim Burton did, and you know, some people may argue he went too far. Some people argue that he took the genre to a completely different place and hasn't ever gone back there, and that's one of the problems. I think he was more on tone than off tone, personally, and I think he was brilliant to make his own universe. Yeah. So that Batman fit perfectly in that universe. You cannot picture that Batman in any other kind of universe. But I think the franchise in and of itself was a victim of, you know, studio interference after it became a hit. Sure. You know? So, like, Burton's right. Burton's this crazy maverick who doesn't really know what he's doing, and he's, you know, this arty, you know, so-called intellectual who's going to make this visual ridiculousness into a movie. And he's not going to get anywhere with that. And it's just a Batman. It's a comic book movie anyway, so it's not going to really go that far because they don't really work. And so never mind. Don't worry about it. Yeah. And the movie becomes a big hit. I mean, it turns into a phenomenon. It really did. And I mean, it cannot be overstated how big Batman was in 1990, 1991. It can't be overstated how, and then everything. Because after that, you got the Flash TV show, you got a whole bunch of, you know, things starting to creep into the system, but they were all kind of offshoots of Batman. Even Spider-Man had Batman DNA in it because of Danny Elfman's soundtrack, because of there's certain aspects of Spider-Man that were informed by the phenomenon that was Tim Burton's first Batman. Yeah. But I think by the time he got to the second one, everybody wanted a piece of the pie. Everybody wanted to influence her. Of course. Yeah. So I mean, look, he, like you were saying about Billy D. Williams, he laid the groundwork for some really interesting choices. To you know, for some really great reveals as the series went on. Yeah. And he just got. It just seems like either he undercut himself or he got undercut because nobody was into shared universes. Nobody was into serialized movies at the time. I mean, you do have sequels, but sequels are usually cookie cutter versions, retreads of the first movie just done in the sequel. So I think Batman is like a phenomenon. If you're talking about like what we learned from rewatching it, it was a phenomenon in and of itself that we don't even see today. No. You know, you're not even going to get a movie like Batman today. What comic book movies are monsters. Even Hellboy, which may be the closest thing, like Del Toro's first Hellboy, might be the closest thing to that kind of immersive
I agree.
visual.
I agree with you.
Even that doesn't reach the height of what Batman was, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, Hellboy was more of pure superhero than Batman, but
it all starts with the main two leads. This GQ article, it's what they say about Keaton. Keaton is probably the best Batman ever, and he's definitely the best Bruce Wayne ever. On screen, Keaton reliably comes off as very weird and very smart. The exact qualities Bruce Wayne should exude. This is a different take on Bruce Wayne than the movies that would follow. Here, he's a weird, rich recluse, and he's not particularly famous. His parents' murder has been long forgotten. Today, you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who didn't know Batman's origin story, but Batman casts the whole thing as a mystery to be solved by journalist slash love interest Vicky Vale, and it works surprisingly well.
Right.
It goes on.
Another problem. Every iteration of Batman that came after it had to redo the death of of the Waynes, and I mean we after Burton's version we really didn't need another other than to just show that it wasn't the Joker who killed them, which is a Burton Burton fantasies. He didn't. That's not how it happened.
Right, but choices like that make so much sense for you're starting a movie universe. This is the ultimate universe. He's creating.
I don't really have a problem with it. I didn't. I mean, I know some people who did have a problem with it who aren't not necessarily because it wasn't the comic book thing. It's just because it was like really convenient that this guy you're chasing just happens to be. But no, I don't really have it.
It also elevates. I mean, making that decision actually elevates this rivalry between the two of them. Otherwise, it really is just like the comics where, crazy just begets more crazy, which, look, the Christian Bale Batmans, that was the whole idea of the Nolan Batman run, is that, the crazier someone gets in response to madness, the crazier people, every reaction has an opposite and equal reaction, which is also a valid take, So in both of these, they're just two distinctly different universes. They go on to talk about Nicholson's Joker. First, they actually said that getting Nicholson was a casting coup in such a way that it was actually billed ahead of Michael Keaton in the opening credits. So it's amazing how Nicholson is actually the star of the movie, basically being able to get him. Nicholson's Joker has since been eclipsed by Heath Ledger's Oscar-winning performance in The Dark Knight, but there's still plenty to admire about it. The best interpretations of the Joker find him dancing on the line between scary and funny, and Batman often hits that mark. As good as Nicholson is, though, Keaton is better. He's the first actor, and still the only actor, to capture just how weird you'd need to be to respond to a childhood trauma of putting on a costume and beating up criminals. Whenever Bruce sees the Joker, it's like he goes into a fugue state. It's not just recognizing the dude who killed his parents, it's recognizing his own psychosis manifesting on the other side of the law in a horrifying but fascinating way. So
I agree. I think also I don't think you could have gotten Ledger's Joker without Nicholson's foundation. So whereas Ledger did kind of overpower his, but I mean Ledger's Joker had the benefit of being meta. It's informed by like 30 years almost of Batman hysteria, of Batman lore becoming very mainstream. So, Nicholson didn't have much to draw from other than Cesar Romero's turn as the Joker in the Adam West.
Right.
So, I mean, look, Nicholson was always going to be Nicholson.
It was a scarier evolution of the Cesar Romero Joker.
Oh yeah,
it was the next phase for both of them in terms of physical, aesthetics.
Right. I wouldn't disagree. But I mean, you couldn't without those two steps, without Cesar Romero leading to Jack Nicholson. The Heath Ledger wouldn't be what Heath Ledger's Joker is. He needed two other versions of the Joker to kind of work against in order to make his Joker pop out. And he is my favorite Joker. He really is.
Yeah.
Just as, which is very odd. Just as Michael Keaton is my favorite Batman. I mean, Batman hasn't been topped by Keaton. I did like Affleck, which surprised.
Loved Affleck as Batman.
The heck out of me. Surprised the heck out of me. I don't think it tops Keaton, but he didn't have the opportunity that Keaton had.
Do you know what's funny? You get little snippets in Suicide Squad. He's actually perfect Or is it? It's Suicide Squad, right? He was in.
Yeah. Yes, he
that
was.
That is Batman. That is, and Ben Affleck is pulling it off in such a way that if we'd had a whole movie of that, I feel like we would.
And we should have. I don't know why Warner Brothers. I mean,
really
I don't know what
having this argument. I know. Well, now we got Robert Pattinson, so.
Which, you know what? Look, the reason I can't really mock Robert Pattinson is because everyone said the same thing about Heath Ledger.
This is why this generation.
Only one of the few people who said, if they cast Heath Ledger, he must be amazing. Right. You know, so let's just give it a chance. But
this demonstrates though, these Batman castings just demonstrates just how lazy today's youth is, in that they can just go on Twitter and vent. Back in '89, you had to literally handwrite.
Yes, you had to be
to voice your displeasure. That was the
only long time to be angry. You know, then you had to get posted.
You really have to be simmering to sit down and carefully. I can't believe it. I am cutting this pen out right now.
How do you spell disgruntled?
Warner Brothers. And then it's not like you could go on your phone and just Google Warner Brothers Studio. I mean, you got to pull out the phone book. Boom.
Yeah, you got to go to the library. Oh, you got to find out.
You got to use the pull the system at that point. And
you got to pull the city, the city ordinance or whatever. Find out exactly where everything.
You got to work hard for this, or at that point have done the work. Because I mean, maybe at that point you've just got a file full of the studio addresses because you've done this before. But at some point in the 1980s and 90s and before that, you had to work.
Sound like it's a curmudgeon-y thing.
It's a commitment. I mean, that's just, I'm saying they were committed to their comic-skateness. They were committed to their.
It was a serious. It was a real thing, and it wasn't monetized. That's the other thing.
Right. They were just genuinely pissed off.
Yeah, nobody was making a dime off of it. I mean, the thing about it today is it will last a lot longer than the outrage actually lasts, because people are making cash off of it.
Right.
But I mean, at that time when people were mad, they were really mad. You know, it was a genuine thing.
Yeah.
It was I don't know. It sounds curmudgeon-y to say. It was a better time. It really was, for entertainment, for this kind of stuff. It was a better time. We had much less of it, which made every bit of it special.
Yeah.
But and so I don't miss having as little entertainment, as little comic book entertainment as we have today. I actually prefer today to then. But I miss the awe, and the reverence that people gave this stuff. I mean, when they did a good job, when you had a good movie, say like Batman, and it was an event. You went, because I mean, look, I was a Star Wars boy. I grew up on Star Wars. So the gold standard is a Star Wars experience. So I think one of the few times, and of course you get the Spielberg movie every now and then, you get E.T., you get some of these other seminal moments where you're just kind of part of a zeitgeist. When I went to see Batman with my uncle was, I can't overstate his enthusiasm for it. He was so happy. So I'm just kind of feeding off of his genuine giddiness about being able to go to this film. And then when you get into the theater, you're like, I'm going to see a Batman movie. I mean, this is not going to be a miserable experience for me. It's not going to drag me down or anything like that. Sure. You go to see it, and I mean, you just start seeing these things that are. It reminds you of the when you were a kid watching Star Wars. Even at that age, I was much younger in 1990. But even at that point, as a grumpy teenager, you're sitting there and you're watching stuff. I mean, when the Batwing goes up and silhouettes in the moon, and then I mean, just little nuggets like that, and people were like, "Wow, this is really visually epic." This is visually something. This is amazing.
Yeah,
like Batman had a plane, and I mean, every goofy little stupid thing they did in the TV show, with his little speedboat and his bat repellent. They kind of did the same stuff in the movie, but they turned it. They made it all relevant. They made it cool. They made it work. And the absurdity wasn't played the joke. It was played for real. And we all found out at the time that we were all for it. We want more of this. We want more of this kind of this spectacle. And
it's funny you mention that, because Everyone wanted it, except apparently the actual people behind it. Burton only agreed to return when sequel-y elements like Vicky Vale were dropped, and Keaton only returned when he scored a massive $10 million raise.
Well, why wouldn't you? I mean, if you were playing Keaton, I don't know why. I don't know about the Burton and the Kim Basinger thing, but why wouldn't you, if you were Keaton, say, "Look, man, I need a payday"? You know, that was Keaton's biggest moment.
Yeah.
You know, Keaton was a star at the time. He had done a lot of things. He was well known. We all knew him. He was probably more known at the time before Batman than he is known now after Batman. At this point in time,
sure.
He hadn't become mythical yet until he did Batman.
Right.
But he was well enough known that people were like, he's a bad choice for this. And he just, you know, he totally crushed it. He knocked it out of the park as Batman. Yeah. He's the best thing in both movies, you know, because we again, Batman Returns. I mean, we're not going to have time to go over that, right?
No.
So
and it's not the 30th anniversary of it, so.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't know what the Vicky Vale thing was for Burton, but I do believe if you're going to get a nut, it should be a monster, you know, acorn, for your war chest if you're going to do that, you know. So if you're Michael Keaton and you are the driving force of this franchise that suddenly just launched off, get your money.
Real
I don't have
quick,
a problem with that.
Real quick before we go to break, having mentally rewatched it in your head, does it hold up? Could you show this to it? Could you?
Will never not hold up because
show this to a teenager right now.
I don't know what a teenager would say because a teenager is there's a number of factors into a teenager's visualization. Something
a generalized teenager in your head.
I think it will, and only because it's a total spectacle in and of itself. There's nothing to compare it against. You can't look at it and say this is dated. That's dated. That doesn't look. I mean, some of the special effects, maybe, sure. Some of the miniatures and models that you can obviously tell, but I mean, you can't. I mean, it's a visual tour de force in and of itself. It doesn't rub up against anything else. So you can't really go look how old those cars were. Look how weak. Like, you know, there's no cell phones in it. There's nobody. Right. I mean, none of that matters when you look at it. So I think it does hold up, personally.
Very cool. Well, chime in on the Facebook feed. We respond very instantly on that. Chime in on the YouTube feed as well, too, or Twitch, whichever platform you choose.
And Brian Abraham is wrong.
He always is, right?
Yeah, no matter what he says.
I always agree with
Brian. When he agrees with me, he's wrong.
I agree with Brian. All right. When we come back, we have the iconic Mr. Kevin Conroy. The superpower you wish you had?
Teleportation.
Ooh. There you go.
I always go flight. I'm always like, I want to fly.
You teleport. You don't need to fly.
Right.
You'd never be late for work.
That's what you would do. This is why you're the co-host of a middling podcast, because you don't dream big enough.
Because I can't teleport. If I could teleport, you think I would be sitting here right now?
Secrets of the Sire.
Of the Sire. Before we get to the Kevin Conroy interview, we threw this question out on the interwebs previous to the show, as whether or not you thought Batman still holds up today. Tony Atkinson says, "Are you crazy? Of course it does." So that was easy. Luke Cooper, though, commented, and I thought this was actually a much more detailed response. "It was a great movie at the time, but it is not dated well. The animated moments always look odd and out of place, and the action feels a little flat. The performances of the two leads still hold up, though, and the urban gothic tone is perfect, and no one has ever written a more iconic Batman theme than in Danny Elfman's score." He goes on to add, though, the scene in which the Joker talks to the burnt corpse of a rival is still creepy as hell. "You're a vicious bastard, and I'm glad you're dead." I gotta be honest, though. I would have agreed to this. I would have agreed 100%, except I rewatched it, and it was like, no, this thing's still like...
No, I know. I mean, look. You know me and criticisms, right?
Yeah.
You know how I kind of parse out criticism.
Mm-hmm.
I judge your criticism as valid, all depending on how you criticize it, right?
Right, like his is a valid criticism. I might disagree with it, but it's valid, right?
It's not. I don't even think it's valid because everything is. I mean, everything kind of passes on. all the arts pass on. Every piece of special effect is gonna get old. I mean, that just kind of means you can't watch any old movie.
Yeah.
Because it didn't have CGI back then. So I mean, that's not, to me, it doesn't work as for me personally, not in general.
This is actually, it
doesn't work as a genuine criticism.
But what you just said is actually very interesting, right? It just made me think for a split second. Even, going back to the 80s when I was like a little kid, watching these movies, I always forget. I had a level of forgiveness for special effects because you just sat there and go, well, we can't do better than this. Like we can't do better than claymation animation to demonstrate something that's unbelievable. I mean, like Return of the Jedi was models and things like that. And it's like, wow, even that was amazing. So there was a level of just built-in forgiveness for this stuff that I wonder, and we can't answer the question because we're not teenagers or little kids now. I wonder if the kids are so spoiled today with great special effects that this truly is.
I'll have to wonder.
A valid criticism now, just because they're just used to it. It's like, what do you mean they can't do that?
It's valid now, but I mean, look, it's not gonna be valid later. The criticism in general is it doesn't look new, and therefore it's bad.
Right.
I mean, that's a broad stroke of that criticism. It's not slick. It's not sliding. So it's not good. And that's not a valid critique. There's music and stuff like that was recorded when recording instruments were not precise. But it's still genius music. It doesn't change the music that you listen to. It just changes the quality of the way you hear the sound. So it's, like the signal to noise ratio on complaints like that is more noise than signal as far as I'm concerned. Because it's a critique, but it's like a critique for the sake of a critique. Because how can anybody in 1980s, in the 1990 make a movie that's going to hold up to 2019? There was no way anybody could do that.
Well, again, I'm just curious if the mental state. We always had these built-in forgiveness for these kind of.
Of course.
And now I'm just curious if today's generation just doesn't have that.
No special effect, I think, other than perhaps Jurassic Park, has ever been like, wow, that looks real. I totally believe that. We do judge on special effects, even our generation.
Mm-hmm.
But we're like, hey, those are nice effects. But I mean, we know they're effects. Yeah. I mean, only just recently with the de-aging thing on Robert Downey Jr. in Civil War and also Michael Douglas in the Ant-Man is like, wow, that's almost flawless, But that just broke. I mean, I mean, it's a different world. I just don't think it's a valid critique that it doesn't look new, so that means it's bad. I just don't. That doesn't do anything for me.
Fair enough. Well, I'll tell you what has aged extraordinarily well and will continue to age extraordinarily well is Batman the Animated Series, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, all those wonderful things. And thanks to our friends at Wizardworld, Jerry in particular, the PR guy, who was able to get us interviews with several folks. Next week we'll have another interview as well too. But we got the iconic Kevin Conroy talking about Batman.
Kevin freaking Conroy.
It just unbelievable. So thank you again. It was about a month ago that I was at Wizardworld, so you'll hear a little bit of crowd noise, but check it out. He talks Mask of the Phantasm. He talks about his favorite episodes, and he also talks about the controversial question of whether or not Batman should kill. Listen in.
How does it feel to be the iconic voice of Batman, the only voice?
It's a job I kind of stumbled into back in '91.
Yeah.
And when you book a job as an actor, all you know is the few episodes they signed you for. You have no idea that the show will be picked up or that show will turn into another show. I mean, Batman the Animated Series became Batman and Robin, that became Justice League, that became Batman Beyond, then the Arkham games, and the direct-to-video movie. And it's 28 years later, and I'm still doing it. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's amazing, too. We're at the Wizard World Philadelphia show, and Fridays tend to be slow days, yet your line continually, every Wizard show I see you at, your line is always jam-packed. How does that feel to have such an impact with the fans?
I feel so lucky to have played a character that has such a passionate fan following. Fans love Batman so much. They have they have such a personal relationship with him. And when you're the voice of an animated character, it's like you live in people's imaginations. And so you're living in a very intimate place with them.
Yeah.
And they feel like they know me.
Yeah.
You know, they approach me like I'm an old friend. People come up and throw their arms around me.
Yeah.
Like I'm a family member.
Yeah.
And it's a humbling experience to know that people feel that connected to you.
Yeah. What was your connection to Batman before you got the job? Were you a big fan, a casual fan, no fan at all?
I had a very conservative Catholic childhood. We didn't have comic books. But as an adolescent, I got turned on to the Batman series with Adam West. So that was my first introduction to Batman, which is not really true Batman.
Yeah.
You know, it was a wonderful show. I
Yeah.
love Adam. They had a great guest stars, amazing guest stars.
Yeah.
But it was done like almost a cartoony kind of version. You know, Zam, Pow, Wow. You know, it was like almost a Warhol version of Batman.
Sure.
And when I met him to do this show, he said, "No, we love Adam, but that's not what we're doing." And I had to kind of come up to speed on the Legends of the Dark Knight. You know, the real, true Batman legacy.
Yeah.
And that's totally different than what Adam West was doing. So I've really fallen in love with this character the same way the audience has. He's so ennobling.
Yeah.
His motives are so pure. He never kills, you know?
We are a big fan of segues on the show. That was a segue into my next question. What did you think about the idea that Batman kills now? Or the I guess, what would be the Batman versus Superman style Batman?
It's taking it into a new realm that would never have existed in the animated world.
Yeah.
That just wasn't part of our universe.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that it wasn't.
Yeah.
He didn't kill. He arrested people and he put them in Arkham.
Yeah.
Which is why Arkham Asylum was so perfect for those video games, because every evil villain in the world was in there.
Yep.
It definitely does cross the line to have him killed in the new movies.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it. It's not what we would have done.
Do you feel, you said 28 years, it's almost an attachment to this character. When the different iterations come out, is there a sense of ego or is there a sense of pride? What do you make when you see other Batmans on film or in, not really on television, but on film?
I know the trick of playing the character.
Yeah.
Getting the dual identity of Bruce Wayne and Batman. And not a lot of actors get it right. Some do. But most are either better at Bruce Wayne or better at Batman. And so that's the way I always look at it. I do it from someone who's had to approach those dual identities.
What do you feel is your number one memory of both being on screen, not on screen, but doing the voice of the Batman on the cartoon show, and then your favorite in-person moment? What's your big highlight memory that you can think of?
My favorite show was Mask of the Phantasm.
Okay.
It's a great recording.
Yeah.
And for Chance to Dream of the episodic shows, I love that episode. My favorite out of the sound booth experience of Batman, I think, is probably coming to Comic-Cons. I had no idea this was going to evolve.
Yeah.
Who knew that these were going to happen? And they've taken over. I mean, they're everywhere. And the chance to interact with the audience. When you're a voice actor, you don't get that feedback that you get from a stage performance. Part of the reason I became an actor was because of that thrill of being on stage every night and feeling the energy of the audience. There's a real connection that happens. You don't get that in a booth.
Yeah.
The closest I get to it is coming to these. So I love coming to these and meeting people, hearing how much the character meant to me.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's truly an honor and pleasure to speak with you. You were a voice in my youth as well too. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Check out the all-new Sire Studios website, SireStudiosInc.com. Find all your back issues for The Sire, Mainstream, Undone, and more. And be on the lookout for news and announcements, convention appearances, and brand new podcasts coming to Sire Studios. That address again is SireStudiosInc.com. Welcome back to Secrets of the Sire. Again, I want to thank Jerry Milani at Wizard World, Peter Katz at Wizard World for getting us access to these unbelievable guests. It was an honor to interview Mr. Kevin Conroy. And as always, you can check out all of our great interviews. We've had just a who's who of pop culture folks in the past: Kevin Bacon, Paul Reiser, all these great names that are in this world. So go check us out again on iTunes, on iHeartRadio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is the biggest help you possibly can. All right, we do this every week. We go spinning the racks.
Spin the rack, spin that rack.
San Diego Comic-Con 2019, the quietest year ever. This is actually a newsletter. It's from a newsletter from The Beat. I don't know if you ever checked. If you haven't checked out Comics Beat, it's from Heidi McDonald. It's just, again, I've kind of mentioned this before, and it's an incredible website. Keeps you up to date in the comic book world, which we're trying to make Spin the Racks a little more comic book world. Keep you up to date on what's going on in the comic book universe. We had our San Diego Comic-Con recap from last week, so you can go check out last week's show. They did their total Comic-Con recap in the form of a newsletter that just went out a few days ago. So every year at the Ultra Invite only Sunday night Dead Dog Party for Comic-Con, someone will say, I don't know, this was a strange Comic-Con. It is tradition. But this is the year it was really true. That leaves the elephant in the room, DC's massively changed presence at the show. The WB/DC are undoing huge changes at every level, and DC's booth is perhaps the most vivid and traumatic change of all. I warned you, she wrote, but people were still shocked when they arrived on the show floor and found Image, Scholastic, Humanoids, and Comixology where DC used to be. Deciding to give up DC's anchor position on the show floor is kind of a dick measuring move that new executives make in uncertain terrain, and they'll regret it someday, but they can never go back. The studio assimilation that former publisher Paul Levitz fought against for so many years is now completed and irreversible. It was a little bittersweet to see him and Jeanette Kahn inducted into the Eisner Hall of Fame in tandem. They did so much to make comics, to change comics for the better, and now that legacy is being completely uprooted, even though it lives on with thousands of children. She goes on to talk about the booth itself, that it was very gated off, that basically you really couldn't interact with the talent, and that it was basically there to sell streaming services to you and to kind of show off a big AV spectacle. But in general, she goes on to write, not just DC, but the showbiz retraction. She talks about Marvel's Phase 4. She said, let's be clear, Marvel's Phase 4 presentation was one of the biggest things ever at Comic-Con and the hugest thing this year by a wide margin, which is what we said. But it did mention the fact that WB, just the traditional WB presentation, was AWOL for reasons unknown. This very informative must-read report from Vulture, quoting many industry insiders, explains that it costs $250,000 to put on a Hall H show. I'm not sure what that means, to be honest. I guess private jets to fly the cast in from London. The most convincing report was that WB was holding back on their Joker presentation since it is more Toronto Film Festival than San Diego Comic-Con, and they feared fan backlash. DC has been doing a number of things. They're printing less comics. Their movies have always been up and down. Are you worried? What does this report say to you, Hassan, about the state of DC Comics?
I don't know. It's always been, for a long time, it's been being very corporatized by Warner Brothers, by its owners. So, when's the last ground they broke in publication-wise?
Yeah.
What's the last seminal piece of work? Honestly, DC's got, out of seminal works, they've got probably all of the ones from our industry, right? They've got, with the exception of Watchmen. No, yeah, because Watchmen is Marvel, right?
No, Watchmen's DC. What are you doing?
Watchmen is DC. Excuse me.
You're absolutely killing me. That's it. You're fired. That's it.
Whatever. You didn't know the guy's name was Retaliante, so whatever.
I think on a scale of forgivable
I'm all right.
offenses,
I'm fine.
the no-name character in
Who's the one who started this?
30 years ago versus the most iconic graphic novel of all time.
That's right. I am the master of obscure media.
We're going to look back on this episode. This will not be in your highlight reel.
No,
well, actually, the rest of the episode, maybe.
I don't really have anything in a highlight reel. But, okay, so Watchmen, Dark Knight, Kingdom Come. It's all DC. You know, all the seminal works are coming from DC Comics. So, when's the last monster thing that they've done? Yeah. Other than New 52, which, you know, look, it's your mileage. I don't even know if the mileage varies on New 52. So, it's been happening it's been coming for a long time.
That Joker trailer.
Lack of participation. Yeah.
No, go ahead. The lack of participation. Go ahead.
The lack of No, I mean, my reaction wasn't to your interjection. It's like I don't know how I feel about the new Joker movie.
Well, that really Joker trailer looks really awesome as a trailer, and now, you know, with a lack of Comic-Con response, fearing fan backlash. If you're hearing this, I'm just sitting there going, like, is this just? I mean, is there any plan? You know, Warner Brothers pulling.
First of all, I think the fans overplay their hands with these things.
Yeah.
Like something, dislike something. I get it. Decide whether or not you want to participate in something. That is perfectly within our purview, right? Yeah. Fans kind of have this ownership, entitlement thing going. I know that's been said a billion times, and it's not even. I'm not breaking any new ground with this.
Right.
But I really think that that studio reaction to the fans as of late kind of demonstrates how little of the market share the fans actually have, you know? Because, I mean, the vocal fans.
Yeah.
The studios are still going to, the studios do nothing but double down on everything they do, regardless of backlash. They actually want your backlash. They want your ire. So, like, you know, people like, I don't understand why they would act like this to the fans who, you know, kept them, you know, and I mean, it's debatable whether or not the fans actually held anybody up, or, you know, I mean, the fans are a huge part of it.
Yeah.
But the fans didn't make the art. The fans are very fickle when it comes to the art. It's not like the fans are supporting everything and it's the studios that are trying to tear everything down. It's a mutual kind of situation. So I honestly think, regardless of, like, you know, just in reaction to your article of people saying that the company's going to regret this move, I don't know if it will. You know, I honestly think that things are, you know, Warner Brothers and also Marvel especially, they're such juggernauts at the moment.
Well, I mean, it's funny because there's, you know, she talks about the state of the industry, you know, talking about how everyone in the room at some point had some sort of, like, you know, IDW had financial trouble. You know, there was just in general, like, a bunch of different things. You know, DC's kind of hiccuped a little bit here. You know, there's been a lot of turmoil. However, comics in general are actually looking up. You know, the graphic novel industry is now the foundation. Teenage now the foundation, which both things, you know, it might not be in a traditional retailer sense, but both things are very positive things. So, but to see the second biggest, or arguably the biggest, you know, of the big two, kind of taking these steps back, you know, has me.
I mean, from just that arena, you know, I mean, there's still, the content is still coming. They've just taken a step back from actual interaction with the fans, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see.
I agree with the concern.
Yeah.
I don't think it's unfounded, but I also do think that the fan base market share is much smaller than we give it credit for. You know. Yeah. I think we always think that the backlash is going to destroy an industry or bring things down. And I mean, look at Captain Marvel. We honestly know how much of the market share the critics had of Captain Marvel. So,
well, it Snakes in a Plane is actually an even better instance, right? I mean, it killed Comic-Con and it bombed at the box office. So,
which one?
Snakes on a Plane.
Oh, yeah.
That was heck yeah. That was 2010. That was a big Comic-Con moment.
Yeah, it's not a good gauge. It's not a straw poll, the decent straw poll at all anymore.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you think. As always, again, chime in, hit us up, go to secretsofthesire.com, shoot us emails, talk to us on our Facebook pages, facebook.com/secretsofthesire. Next week, the boys are back in town. Well, actually, they never got here yet because this is only season 1, but I digress. We will be reviewing I guess you could call it the hit Amazon Prime series, The Boys. Plus,
there's really a lot of buzz about it.
Yeah, plus Shazam and Smallville's John Glover drops by to talk about his DC connection.
Cool.